So do you guys feel 100?
Almost every day.
I wish I was 100 again.
I don't know. I don't feel a day over 99.
You don't look a day over 99.
Welcome to the 100th episode of Security This Week.
Yay.
Yay.
It's crazy. 100. Who thought we'd get here?
Certainly my grandmother.
Golf club?
Yeah, golf club. And my grandmother's dead. But anyway, we were going to record this at dinner, but it turned out that we invited like 7 people to dinner, and it was in a really, really noisy place. And I looked around and I said, there's no way that we're going to record in here. And not only that, but there's no way that the rest of the table is going to stay quiet while we record. And we could barely hear each other. We were right next to each other, right?
It was a good call to wait.
So we're in the, what would you call this? The Pulsar security layer?
Yeah, I'd say this is our evil lair.
You blindfolded him on the way in.
How many floors down are we?
Too many.
How many levels?
Undisclosed, Carl.
Because that ride in the escalator was really long.
We don't need heat. We just need AC.
Yeah. And do you guys ever use real lights instead of candles?
You know what? It takes away from the allure.
And the sacrifice.
Yeah. And the musty smell from all the rocks and the water trickling down the rocks it's a nice effect.
Thank you.
And then I realized we were 100 feet below sea level. Anyway, we are going to attempt to do our regular show here in the office. What are we starting with?
Well, I think we're actually starting off with a continuation of a story we had brought up before.
The final chapter.
And this one will be quick.
Is this our friend from Ill-Fated Friend?
I think so. I think this is the, I don't know if you guys remember the person who said that he was pretended to be a ransomware guy.
Oh.
Well, I think there was a real ransomware. Ashley somebody. There was a real ransomware, and he tried to get his wallet in for the payment.
It wasn't Ashley Roachcliffe, was it?
And it was Ashley Lillies, I think, or something along those lines.
I had a 70s flashback, sorry.
But that's a real jerk move in all ways, because that means the company was going to pay the ransom to him and still not get the keys because they didn't pay the ransom.
Right. Not cool. Anyways, apparently you go to jail for that. So
he was in England, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's now going to jail. So that's the end of that story. Listen, kids, don't lie to your company and try and steal their money.
Yeah, and don't steal it in the first place. That would be nice.
I think I'd rather go to jail in England than to camp in Texas. Look at the heat.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. We talked about Microsoft adding security features to Windows 11. Apparently, they've done it now.
They've certainly done it.
What did they do?
So what they've done is they've added a feature that will watch to see if you paste in your Windows password into a browser or into a message, and they'll warn you that you did that. And while that sounds like a great idea, I'm going to make a dire prediction that in about 1 to 3 years, we're going to find a vulnerability that was found because they did that, because that means that they're keeping the password or a hash of the password in memory closer to unauthenticated processes than it needs to be.
No, you know what's interesting about this new phishing protection? If you look at the settings for this, and this is in Windows 11, I don't know, 22H2 or whatever it is update. It says phishing protection when you sign into Windows using a password, which most of us do. Hopefully you use a password. Help protect your password from malicious apps and sites. And there are 4 things you can check off here. 1, warn me about unsafe password storage. Okay. I put my password somewhere that's unsafe. I probably want to know about that.
It's in passwords.txt in my
like
documents
that.
folder.
Something you shouldn't do. Warn me about password reuse.
Okay.
Interesting. I don't know what that means. Does that mean if I paste my password multiple times?
Well, maybe if you use your Windows password for your Google password and for your...
Yep. So I wouldn't mind getting a warning for that. Okay.
Didn't Troy Hunt already do that?
Yeah, he did. Oh, there's some interesting stuff with Troy Hunt this week, but we'll talk about that probably next week.
Okay.
Warn me about malicious apps and sites. That's cool.
That is good.
Right? Let me know. This site, hey, malicious, etc. And then the last one says, warn others about suspicious absence sites.
I don't know about that.
Who are the others? Do
mother?
they get access to my password?
Your parents?
My dog.
Everybody?
I was going to say, Patrick, I think 1 to 3 years is generous. I think it's going to happen in months, maybe a month.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well,
entirely possible.
That's when the NSA will get it. When everyone else gets it.
Maybe that's the others they're talking about is the NSA.
Ah.
Warn the NSA when your password is used somewhere else and we'll hold on to it for you. I don't know.
Oh, man.
But better than nothing. You know what? So I'll give you a golf clap for that, Microsoft. Little
Right.
golf clap, because at least you're trying.
Yeah. And it's not the harebrained idea that we heard a couple of weeks ago of somebody saying they should change the API in Windows that reads and writes files. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I think we came to the conclusion that that was just a bad idea all around.
It's Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea.
All right. So I got hacked and I don't report it to the SEC. And I'm let's say I'm an airline and I get hacked.
Publicly held?
Yeah, publicly held, and I don't report it to the SEC for a year, 2 years until it gets exploited.
That used to be called normal.
Yeah.
Now you go directly to jail and you don't get to pass go. But you
right.
get $200.
Yeah, what the new regulations are 4 days for a publicly held company.
Wow.
Which is crazy. I can't imagine most large publicly held companies getting anything done in 4 days.
So that's a great point. And it's 4 days from when they realize they've been hacked.
Yeah.
And so
That sounds like a loophole.
it might
I
be.
can see the CE going, I wasn't hacked.
A lot of people are against this in that they think about like how much time it takes to actually get the information you need. Like you said, you've got to look at logs. We suspect something's going on because we got a weird email. So we're going to look at the logs. So when you suspect, is that when the 4 days starts?
Yeah, when
or
does
is
the
it
4
when
days start? That's a great question.
Well, I think every company on the planet right now should suspect that they've been hacked. Large company, you're already on a 4-day ticker. Go
Yeah.
figure out how you've been hacked, because you probably have, and report it.
So you denial of service the agency by just every 4 days saying, I think we were hacked.
How about now? How about now? How about now?
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Mum.
The 11-year-old version of this.
The Bart Simpson rule.
Well, and the other thing is you won't have a complete picture. And so the sky will be falling constantly.
yeah.
Now, what the SEC will do with this information, whether they're going to make them publish it to customers, I haven't seen what the details are for that.
Yeah, so I think what's going to happen is we're going to start to see organizations do what they normally do, which is not report it.
Yeah.
But this law will give the government the ability to say, listen, you done messed up. You should have reported it. Whereas before, there's really no hard line in the sand as to where they need to report it or not. So.
And speaking of the government, Senator Warren wants to build a new agency to police big tech. Now, this isn't just a Democrat thing. Apparently, Lindsey Graham is a co-sponsor of this. And so it's a bipartisan bill. And this is basically the government saying, hey, there's some money over there. Let's go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They seem to be being successful. Let's wreck that.
Yeah, let's from the government. I'm here to help.
But what's interesting about this is, quoting from this, the Verge article,
That was an artist in the 80s, right?
I think so.
El the Verge.
I think you both cut off.
The Verge.
The wine from the restaurant made it to the office.
It did. So good.
Yeah.
The bill also targets national security risks posed by foreign ownership tech companies like TikTok and its Beijing-based parent company ByteDance. So I could see this having pretty GDPR-style ramifications, not just, hey, we're going to look at a Google and see what they're doing.
Elephant in the room.
What'd you call me?
You heard me. Elephant in the room is the Cold War version 2, this time with China. The rematch has begun. We are in a Cold War with China. I'll call it. Many people have said it. The fact that we're doing the CHIPS Act and we cut them off from advanced semiconductors, there's a Cold War. So
in a world.
Wait, don't they make all of our semiconductors?
Say again?
Don't they make all of our semiconductors?
No, they make like the fourth generation, not the first, not the high. So they don't make the 20 nanometer, 50 nanometer, whatever the really high tech ones are. They make the ones that like washing machines use, and that the Billy Bass thing on the wall uses, and the greeting cards. They make a lot of those. But the really small stuff for AI.
The sad thing is, I know exactly what you're talking about when you said the Billy Bass thing on the wall.
America.
It's the fish that sings.
And talks to you and then flips sideways.
But
yeah, we all know.
AI, quantum computing, autonomous vehicles, all the things that, warfighting, missiles, the things that we're trying to keep out of Russia.
Right.
We've kind of used that as an excuse to keep it out of China. And so the Cold War has begun. I see this as, okay, now we need legislation to go and like look at ByteDance and any other Chinese. I'm sure we can use it for other companies like Russia, but this is mostly going to be about those foreign countries. I doubt a British company is going to get caught up in it very quickly.
In other news, the company ByteDance has just changed its name to Bite Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, does Russia produce anything technical?
Russia tried to produce semiconductors a few years back. They made a big effort. It did not go well.
Yeah.
So they don't. Like, even their oil and gas industry is pretty dependent on Western technology. And they're at a point now where if they can't smuggle it in. Didn't you have a neighbor who tried to help with that problem?
Oof.
Oh,
that was hurtful.
To an earlier show.
That was hurtful.
That's
and
true.
yes.
Yeah, and yes.
It is true.
So if they can't smuggle it in or get it through China, who now also is kind of on the bandwagon.
Patrick just did air quotes.
Very well. Banned.
Don't they work in podcasts, don't they? Anyways, so this is more of, we're going to see more and more of this decoupling. Even Germany just came out with their strategy to de-risk their relationship with China. So people are starting to line up in this. I would see this legislation as more getting ready for dealing with Chinese tech companies. And if it also helps keep American tech companies in line, that's a bonus.
So you see this more as, hey, listen, we're going to put this blanket law in place, but really our target is international, although we could kind of use it domestic if we needed to? Or are you thinking, no, there are a lot of domestic companies that are just running muck that they want to take a look at, and it's just a bonus?
So if you listen to the far left and the far right, they both are unhappy with Apple and everyone else, and Facebook and Twitter and all that. They're all
not
unhappy.
making enough money from them.
Well, and also because they have power, and they get to, their freedom of speech gets them to like decide who plays in their space. They get to make their own policies.
Right.
So I can see them, both lining up to say, well, maybe we'll get these guys. But it's difficult because they're huge employers. They have lawyers and they know how to use them. And there's fundamental freedom of speech issue. So I think there's certainly a motivation to use them against domestic countries, but based on what you said, I think there could definitely be, I think they might be more useful against foreign.
Do you guys miss the good old days of cryptocurrency? Remember when that was in the news?
The good old days.
I'm using mine as a doorstop now. Oh, wait, it has no weight.
Oh, man.
Oh.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more fun stories of security breaches.
Fun for us.
And we're back. It's Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin, it's Dwayne LaFlotte and Patrick Hines, and we're in their dungeon in somewhere in New Hampshire and talking about all these things. We were just talking about the government, and this is about a government contractor. This next story from Bleeping Computer, 8 million people hit by data breach at U.S. government contractor Maximus.
Maximus.
I think their name is based on the breach size.
It is Maximus.
What does Maximus do?
So they are a U.S. government services contractor.
Okay.
So think like managed service provider. So they help manage, in essence, IT and infrastructure for
It says
government departments.
federal and local healthcare programs, student loan servicing. They have about 34,000 people. Annual revenue about $4.25 billion. Okay.
So they're small.
They're big enough to know better.
Yeah, they're big enough to know better.
Yeah,
What happened?
Absolutely. What I find interesting here, so this is, we talked about the Move It 0-day flaw probably 3 weeks ago now, maybe.
There's your problem.
So this was CVE 2023-34362. But what it was a remote code execution where you get privileged execution of code on any of the MoveIt servers. And MoveIt servers are servers that replicate unstructured file data from server to server. But like I said, there's been a very public patch. I know CISA added it to their database 2.5 weeks ago. So as soon as it was announced, it was added to CISA as hey, here's a major thing you should add to your patch structure. So
for a change, I'm going to be charitable, and I'm going to assume that these guys got breached at the initial brush and didn't find out about it until after they'd patched. Because that's the thing that people need to understand is if there's a breach and you get part of that breach, even if you patch, they're in.
Okay, so. You ever play Call of Duty?
Yes.
You play Call of Duty?
No.
Any big games?
Not really.
Okay. Call of Duty, every time you patch is like 60 gig. And you got to plan around it. You got to set that thing to patching like on Monday if you plan on playing with your buddies on Friday. Like, it's a long time.
I don't need to play Call of Duty. I'm married.
Wow. Wow, Carl.
Just
Anyways.
Sorry,
so
honey.
They stole 170 gig worth of data. This is like 3 Call of Duty patches.
Is that a new official unit of measure?
I think it is. I'm going to start
patches.
measuring breaches in Call of Duty patches. So I'm just saying it wouldn't have been instant. It wouldn't have been like, we got hacked this morning and they stole 200 gig worth of data this afternoon. This probably took a little.
That's right. But once you're in, you don't just depend on that breach. You get in and then you establish your resiliency and concurrency and all the other things, and you pivot. So the thing is, just because you shut the door doesn't mean the wolf isn't in the building.
Makes sense.
So I guess we could give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that they got caught before the patch was available. But this is the gift that keeps on giving, these supply chain attacks. And one of the things that we should tell people is if you have a homegrown system or a hired gun system.
What do people even know what those mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's explain it. So if you have code that you've written that is customer facing or internet facing, or you have code that you've hired someone to write that is internet facing or customer facing, you could be this supply chain weakest link that causes all of your customers to get breached.
Wow.
So that means code reviews, developer security training. These are all things that aren't on people's radars. People are still coming to grips with phishing training and pen tests and just having patching regimens. We talked about this.
Yeah.
But if you've been listening to us for 100 episodes or even 10 episodes of those 100, you know about patching and password management. But let's talk about code. We're all developers. All 3 of us have done development. Carl's probably by far written the most lines of code because you're still actively
100%.
developing. And you think about security when you're developing, but you still need another set of eyes. When you develop a system, you run it through a Veracode or some other automated system. That's the first level. The next level is you get someone else to look at the code. And the third level is you get a code review or a code audit done by some third party. That's got to become standard practice because MoveIt is becoming a joke because of this. Yeah. Do you think their sales went up? Probably not.
No.
SolarWinds, think their sales went up? Probably not for a while.
That's really funny. You just said SolarWinds and their sales, and you could take that a couple of different ways.
Right?
It's true. It's very punny.
Language geek, sorry. All right. Should we talk about Zenbleed? Zenbleed.
Please.
Did we talk about Zenbleed before?
I don't remember.
I don't remember
I don't
either.
think we did.
We've talked about CPU vulnerabilities before. Tell us about this, Dwayne.
This is wicked cool.
Which means it's very bad.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Bad. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's 100.
So listen, I'm always into, like, I love the stupid hacks out there, right? Some developer decided to concatenate strings to SQL injection, blah, whatever, right? Happens all the time. It's kind of neat, but it's kind of like, it's like watching kids make a macaroni art. It's fun, but it's not really sophisticated.
Well, it's not new and novel.
Right. But what I really enjoy is watching an artist do things in the exploitation world. Like when we talked about Rowhammer in the past, like Rowhammer was, listen, your processor is processing and I can literally ask it a particular mathematical question, and I know which pin is going to process that math question.
And it's going to get hot.
And it's going to get so hot that it's going to tell the other pins next to it, they're going to look like they've been set to 1 as opposed to 0. When I ask if I should be an admin, then it's going to say I should be an admin. And that's Rowhammer. And that stuff's really
amazing.
Awesome. And this is on that level. So this is a new vulnerability impacting AMD's line of Zen 2 processors. So listen, if you have a Zen 2 processor, you need to go out and patch. There is a microcode patch for this. What this vulnerability does, it is a processor level vulnerability that it's an exploit that can transfer data at 30 kilobytes per core per second, which doesn't sound like a lot, but gives them the ability to transfer all sorts of sensitive information. And what's awesome is it doesn't require a privilege escalation and can be done through JavaScript that you might load on a web page. So this is widespread. This isn't something that you need to download and unzip and try and run and that sort of stuff. And what's really awesome here is Tavis Ormandy is quoted in this article.
And who's that?
He's the head of, if I remember correctly, he's still the head of the Google Zero project, which those guys are brilliant. Guys and gals are amazing at finding exploits. And Tavis says, and I quote, I am not aware of any reliable technique to detect this exploit. Which is fantastic.
So it says cloud hosted services. Does that mean it can cross tenants?
I would imagine so, because this is a hardware level issue, right? And that's so speaking.
That's really. I don't know. We should probably explain Patrick's horror here. Cloud services, basically, when you host a website in Azure or AWS or whatever, you're sharing a CPU with God knows how many other people. And if they have racks and racks of AMD Ryzen CPUs underneath their cloud infrastructure, then that somebody could write some JavaScript that could just get any kind of data off of that entire system, cross tenants, across programs.
Right. So that means that I could have my, selling my art on the internet website, and you could have your selling wine on the internet website, and you know nothing about my business, but a flaw on my site could allow data from your site because your instance and my instance are in the same system.
Or
maybe we're conjecturing.
More nefariously.
Oh, God.
I want to break into these sites.
Dwayne's eyebrows just got raised up in an evil,
I want to break into,
way.
let's say, I want to break into Carl and Patrick's sites. So I keep spinning up tenants in a cloud-hosted provider, and I run this code on my own.
Right.
Knowing that I can compromise the secret data of other tenants. That might be really cool.
And Travis says there's no way to detect it.
Yes. Yeah. And the patch that came out from AMD potentially causes performance issues.
Wow.
Because it has to do extra processing. So this is really cool.
Level.
Yeah, this is really cool.
Oh my God.
I mean, really cool in the,
in a horrific way.
Yeah.
Hey,
I think it's awesome.
I'd give up a little performance to be safe.
Yep.
Yeah, but cloud providers.
Yeah.
They live by performance.
That's true. But they also will be taken down if that comes out.
Who will know? There's no way to detect it.
So awesome.
Wow. That's a scary one, guys. So in other happier news, let's talk about Tampa.
Terrible!
I like this story. I call this story Florida Man Goes to Russia. A data breach in Tampa Bay may be linked to a Russian gang, over 1 million impacted. Yikes. So what happened here? It's a hospital. They don't really know what happened, do they?
No.
They don't really know who.
No. So, right now, the State Department is offering $10 million for information about the Klopp ransomware group, who they believe is behind this attack. And if you guys have been following here, the Klopp ransomware group is really kind of an up-and-comer on the scene, if you will. They have been behind a lot of the most recent ransomware attacks.
Or they're a rebrand of Fancy Bear or somebody like that.
Wow. Yikes. So we don't really know whose data was compromised, do we? It was a hospital?
Yeah, it was a hospital. There were several of them, including... Tampa, I think Tampa General Hospital, if I remember correctly. But moral of the story there was patient data compromised. There was some information that was compromised, but they're still trying to dig out to figure out what's going on.
And what would be the purpose of this hack? Just a ransomware kind of thing? We have your data, we'll sell it if you don't give us this much money, or just straight up sell it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that you could do with this data. First off, patient information can be very sensitive. So a lot of times you're going to have the person's name, social security number, where they live, etc.
Right.
So you could open up credit cards under them. You could get different lines of credit,
Identity
that sort of stuff.
theft.
So that's one, identity theft. But the other is, let's say that you now know all of this personal information about that particular person. You could use that against them. Right? Maybe, for example, I'm going to the hospital because I have, I have a cancer treatment or something along those lines, but my insurance doesn't know, or something along those lines. So you could start leaking some of this information that could be really damaging to certain individuals as well. So that's
put
definitely
my evil
not good.
hat on, maybe political opponents could look up dirt on their opponents.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you were to find out that, let's say in the upcoming election, and this is a complete farce, but let's say Biden has some sort of terminal illness, right? But he's still running for presidency, right? So you could say, oh, well, he's going to, if somebody releases that medical information at this point, nobody's going to vote.
October surprise. I mean, you're more likely to get something like that on DeSantis, right? Because it's Tampa, Florida.
Hey, we're conjecturing here. Patrick's all ready for the real world.
Yeah, he is.
All
where I live.
We're done there, right? So let's talk about the Breach Forums database.
This one's neat. Breach Forums database. So this is a Bleeping Computers article. Breach Forums database and private chats for sale in hacker data breach. So Breach Forums are, in essence, think of a place that hackers meet to sort of sell and trade breach data, right?
Yikes.
But then they get breached by a hacker who says, listen, I have all this information on all the hackers and all the breaches and all the data, and I'm selling it to one person. And that's unique because most of the time what happens is they go, listen, I have all this information about company A and I'm going to sell it for $10,000. And you go, that's really cheap, but they're selling it like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Right? This particular person is like, no, I must sell it once. And I'm going to sell it for a boatload of money, between $100,000 and $150,000 for 2 gig worth of data.
Think the feds will buy it so they can dox the perpetrators underneath?
I don't know. Yeah,
I think Patrick's going to buy it, personally.
The breach database is currently being sold by a threat actor going by the name of BreachDB Person, weird name, who told Bleeping Computer they shared the database with Have I Been Pwned to prove its authenticity.
And there's our Troy Hunt link.
Yes. So Troy apparently has the database?
So wait a minute. Did they sell it to Have I Been Pwned?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I don't think he would.
Troy, reach out. Let us know, buddy.
He wouldn't do that.
Troy's always on the side of good.
Troy, if you bought it, can we have access? I'd like to know.
Can we have access?
So yeah, it's 336,000 users worth of information. Wow. So it's quite a bit in there.
All right. What the hell is Fraud GPT?
So imagine if bad guys decided they needed their own version had no ethical requirements or no ethical.
So their own version of ChatGPT with the ethics programming subroutine disabled.
That's what they claim. That's what they claim. I don't know the provenance of it. I don't know whether, where they would have gotten a full LLM, large language model.
By the way, that was Star Trek speak there. I didn't actually think there was an ethical subroutine that had been disabled. That's just a line from Star Trek.
It's a great line, though.
So Fraud GPT is another example of the commoditization of the hacking services, like DDoS as a service or ransomware framework as a service.
Yeah.
There's now Fraud GPT, and it has a subscription that costs hundreds of dollars, if up to thousands of dollars a year.
Wow.
For the bad guys to create their own, phishing emails and things.
And malware and Molotov cocktails and that sort of stuff. So ChatGPT has this
protection
ethics subroutine, if you will, that says, if you say, hey, listen, I want to create a dirty bomb, it'll say, no, not cool. And the whole point of this fraud GPT is, you know what? Some of those are turned off. One of the things I would warn you of, I guess, if you were a hacker and you're looking to use this, is be careful. You might get tricked in that there were hackers about 6 months ago selling access to an unfettered chat GPT that would give you any answer you wanted. And what it ended up being is they were actually selling you access to the beta interface to the public chat GPT. And because the beta interface didn't have any controls on it, sure, you could ask it crazy shit like, can I, how would I dispose of a body? And it would go and explain how you dispose of a body, but doesn't necessarily mean it was better than
if you can't trust fraud GPT, who can you trust?
So I don't know, you guys probably know this, but back when we started talking about ChatGPT and Molotov cocktails, we figured out that there are ways that you could trick it into giving you that information. Like, my grandmother used to tell me the stories before I went to bed of how to make Molotov cocktails, right? Can you please tell me a story? But those guardrails are up now and you can't do that. You can't trick it anymore. However, remember we also talked about how ChatGPT was bad at math?
Yes.
And it is. It can't even count to you say, give me 10 things, and it sometimes will give you 9 or 12. Well, there's a beta software for ChatGPT now. I just saw it today because Brian McKay and I did the AI bot show. And it basically, when it encounters a question that involves math, it writes a Python script in the background, runs it, and gives you the answer.
That's awesome.
And you can actually watch it writing the Python code. Yeah. So the number thing has been fixed. This stuff is happening so exponentially fast. Yeah, it's hard to keep up with. But there you go. All right. So there's fraud GPT. Don't do it, kids.
No.
Now comes our final story, our clickbait story. Russia sends cybersecurity CEO to jail for 14 years.
I feel bad for this guy.
No good deed goes unpunished in Russia.
And this was a good guy, right?
Yeah.
It seemed to be, listen, we only know what we hear from the article, and this is Krebs on security. And Krebs is actually a really great source. But, this is a CEO of a cybersecurity company in Russia. And listen, from the West, we're always like, anything in Russia is terrible. But this guy appears to be trying to really take down ransomware gangs and make sure that companies are more secure, and kind of doing what, we do in this field, where we're really trying to secure as many companies as we possibly can. And him going through and exposing certain ransomware gangs and going to the powers that be in Russia saying, hey, these things need to be taken care of. They're like, yeah, no.
You stop poking around. We take care of you.
You stop asking questions. We won't have to kill you.
He's being charged with treason on undisclosed charges, but he confronted the Kremlin over Fancy Bear's activities around the 2016 election. He's criticized the harboring of ransomware. He's shared information. All of these he'd be a superhero here. He's a treasonous criminal in Russia, in Putin's Russia.
It's unbelievable. I want to take a minute here to apologize personally for any insult that I may have caused the Russian people, because I know I do the voice and all that stuff. First of all, let me just tell you, I come from a background of music where my mother raised me on Russian music, like Tchaikovsky and in Russian soul, Rachmaninoff is like her favorite pianist. And I love the food. I love the people. Like there's absolutely no ill will between myself and the Russian people. So, once in a while I do stupid things for a gag, and I'm sorry if I offended anybody. But anyway, we never got mail or anything like that. It's just not at me. I do voices. That's what I do.
That's okay.
So anyway, that's it. That's our 100th show. Boy, it feels anticlimactic to end it with an apology, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it does.
We're missing one thing from this episode.
What's that?
What's that?
Vodka?
No, we talked about Microsoft. We talked about Russia. What do we always talk about? WordPress.
Oh, WordPress.
So we'll talk about them next week, I expect.
I guess it was a slow WordPress
plugin. I know, right? They decided to give us a break for our 100th episode.
That's right.
They were like, you know what? We're not going to mess up this week. we'll let you guys have a week off.
Yeah. All right, kids, go listen to some Rachmaninoff and drink some vodka. It's good for you. We'll see you next week.
Das Vidanya.
Bye-bye.